Okay, guys. Topics in Torah. Topics in Torah. Class number 3. We started the book of Bereshit. We got about a quarter of the way through last week's parsha of Lech Lecha. This week's parsha is Vayera. So I want to get back into Lech Lecha, though. I want to pick it up where we left off last week because it's just starting to get fun. Avram Avinu just made it into the land of Israel, so I want to go through some philosophical issues he dealt with as soon as he got to Israel, and then continue with the story. Like I said in the previous classes, the way I want this class to work is I want you guys to talk. Those of you that have videos you can turn them on. I want you guys to be involved in it because I want to relearn the stories. I want to learn them well, and I want to learn them as an adult. So I want you to ask adult questions, get involved in it, and let's see what you guys come up with. Okay? And okay, it's fine. So we left off last week. God had just spoken to Abraham. The first words at age 75, Lech Lecha. Leave it all behind, make Aliyah, come to the land of Israel. And Avram comes, he takes his wife Sarai, his name is Avram still, his name hasn't been changed yet. He takes his wife, he takes his nephew Lot, he takes the converts and his followers and his workers. They all come up with him to the land of Israel, settles in the south area by Be'er Sheva, and builds an altar, prays to God, thanks God, and Yishtabach Shem Olad, praise God. God spoke to him. It's a really big event. Comes to Israel. Awesome. Then, right after that happens, everybody was so excited. Things take a turn very quickly for the worst. Because what happened? Says the Pasuk, there was a Ra'av. There was a famine in the land of Israel. It was Kaved Me'od. It's a very hard famine. People can't find food. Okay, anybody know what does Avram do because of the famine? How does Avram respond? Nisim?
Goes to Egypt.
Goes to Egypt.
Excellent. Nisim Isaac, beautiful. He goes down to Egypt. He leaves Israel and goes down to Egypt. Egypt is better when it comes to food. That has to do a little bit with the agriculture, the way it works there. Israel is very rain-oriented. That's what we're praying now. Mashiva Ruach Marida Geshem. Here in Israel, we already switched over. Those that are getting on a plane next week, as soon as you land in Israel, in your Shmona Esrei, in your Tefillah, we're changing to 10 Tal Batal Livracha, Barech Aleinu. We're changing the bracha and the Shmona Esrei already to pray for rain because we're ready for rain over here. That's how our schedule works. Those of you out there in Chutz La'aretz, you're going to wait another month to change over your tefillah. But we changed over. We're praying for rain right now because we're very rain-based. Israel is also very fruit-based. The fruits of Israel, we grow the fruits. Egypt is different. Anybody know how stuff grows in Egypt? What's the water supply in Egypt?
The Nile River.
The
Nile River. They wait.
The Nile River, the
Yam
Suf,
the Nile River floods.
The Yam Suf, the Red Sea. They add themselves a natural water source there. So and that makes it very good actually for vegetables. Not as good for fruit, but makes it very good for vegetables. The food there is easier. So in famine times, going down to Egypt becomes very popular because they have their own water. They can feed people. So over here as well, there's more food down in Egypt. Avram and his family leave Israel for the food. Okay. Here's the big question the rabbis ask. Was that the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do? What do you guys say?
Well, did he leave everyone behind in Israel?
Well, at this point, he has his wife, he has his nephew, a couple of servants, but I'm not sure how much, or maybe a couple of converts. Sounds like they went with him, or they might have abandoned him. It's not so clear. The commentators go different angles. Some say that at this point he's already poor, so I'm not sure what happened to those people that came with him. So if those people were like servants, that it's a little bit difficult. Did they disappear? Were they running for food? Did they run away? If they're followers, they probably stayed with him. But he moves down to Egypt. Was that right or wrong?
I don't see anything wrong with that though. Like if Israel isn't providing any food, then I don't really think he has any other choice.
There's no other choice. There's no food. Now, what happened right before? How did we end last week's class? Last week we ended, he got to the land of Israel because God told him to go there. And then God blessed him that he's going to be blessed. He's going to have children. Things are going to be awesome. That was the blessing of God. And then the next verse says there was a famine. So Izzy's like, hello, there's no food. You leave. There's no problem. Everybody here agrees with Izzy? From the silence, that's a yes. Anybody disagree with Izzy? Basically, there's a famine, you get up, you leave, and that's it. That's how it works. That's what the Abarbanel says. The Abarbanel, Don Abarbanel, was a big rabbi in Spain, Middle Ages. He writes that clearly. He says, we don't rely on miracles in Judaism. If there's a famine, you're not going to survive. You got to get up, you got to leave. It's very rational, it's very logical. God would never want you to die there in a famine. That's what the Abarbanel is like the rational Abarbanel. Comes along the Ramban. Ramban Nachmanides, also from Spain, big philosopher, but also a big mystic. He comes along and is like, doesn't work that way. If God just spoke to you and told you you're going to be blessed and things are going to be great and things are going to be awesome, so where's your emunah? Where's your faith? Where's your bitachon? Where's your trust in God? God just spoke to you and told you you're going to be blessed. How do you turn around and leave a second later? You're being tested by God. Don't you see the test? Open your eyes to the test. You're supposed to be staying and tough it out a little bit. Life is not always so easy. Tough it out. Hashem will provide. Anybody like that Ramban? Anybody dislike that Ramban?
I just like that. I think it's because I feel like in other classes I've had before, we've talked about how even if you're blessed by God, it's like it's not smart to put 100% of your faith in Him. Like if you see signs that things are going wrong, then you need to take things into your own hands to fix it, and you shouldn't just, wait for God to do something about it.
Okay, I hear. Very good. I like it. But here, okay, I like also said, if you see signs, how do you read signs? But how do we know how to read signs? Meaning, you want a really big sign? God just spoke to you and said, go to Israel. Gave you a commandment, a mitzvah. Go to Israel. Meaning, it's not like other cases where you're not sure what God wants. We know we have a Torah, but we're not sure exactly how it fits into my life directly. Here, God spoke directly to Abraham and said, Abraham, get up, go to Israel. It's a mitzvah and you're going to be blessed. Straight up God talk. But as he's saying, doesn't matter. Even if there's God talk, look at the signs. If there's a famine, go. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, if your life depends on it, like if you're really running out of food and there's nothing more you can do, I'd say, try and go find food.
Good. The Abarbanel, there's a principle. The Abarbanel argues on the Ramban and says, like, what are you talking about? You're supposed to go if there's a famine. So what does he say? There's a principle called Ein Somchin Al Hanes. You're not supposed to rely on miracles. You have to put your effort in also. But the Ramban, who knows those same Gemaras and sat in those same classes that you sat in, Izzy, doesn't like it. So you should know, Izzy, your point is valid. It's good. It's the approach of the Abarbanel. It's the approach of the rationalists. It's interesting. The more rational commentators who aren't into the mystic, that they tend to go in your direction. But there's a whole school of thought of the more mystics that put a bigger place in emunah, in faith, because ultimately God does decide what happens to us. So where's your faith? Meaning, who said it's relying on miracles? God just spoke to you and said you should be there. Meaning, we're not talking about a case where God didn't speak to you. That's where the Ramban is coming from. Fine. So Abarbanel, Izzy, anybody want to try to defend the Ramban? I think the only guy that's going to defend the Ramban, Nachmanides, you should know, of the commentators, the Ramban is more known and is more read than the Abarbanel. Interesting. Even though I think that in modern American Judaism, the Abarbanel's approach is much more classic. We don't rely on miracles. The Ramban is a lot more read. The concept of faith and having faith is a lot more read. Anybody want to go with that side? Or everybody's like, no. We don't. Anybody want to try to defend the Ramban? Everybody likes the Abarbanel. Okay, fine, very good. Everybody likes the Abarbanel, but I want to actually read the Ramban because the Ramban is powerful. Because the Ramban comes along and he's like, Alo, not only should Avram not have gone down so what happens? Avram leaves Israel, goes down to Egypt with his wife Sarah. Egypt is going to be very hostile. So he's going to say, I'm worried you're beautiful. They might kill me because of you and take you as their wife. So can you tell everybody that you're my sister, try to protect me? He creates this whole plan we're going to get back to try to save his wife, save himself from dying. And ultimately, the second they get there, Sarah's taken captive. She's almost raped by Paro. So the Ramban goes, Abraham sinned by going down. He sinned a chet gadol, a big sin. But then he writes bishgaga, by accident. It wasn't on purpose. He didn't do it on purpose. He thought it was correct to go down. But because he sinned by going down, it's going to lead to his wife being taken captive. And we spoke last week about the principle, ma'aseh avot siman labanim, that the actions of our forefathers is going to repeat themselves. This is what's going to lead to the slavery in Egypt. Just like Sarah is going to be taken captive, so too we're going to be taken captive. We're going to go down to Egypt. This is going to be directly because of the mistake that Avram made by accident. Rav Shimshon Ophel Hirsch comes along. He goes with the Ramban's approach, and he says, yeah, but what do you mean it's by accident? Either you sin or you didn't sin. You have faith or don't have faith. He goes, no, it was by accident because Avram had nobody to learn from. He didn't have it. Avram didn't have an Avram to learn from about when to have faith, when not to have faith. This is one of those sticky places where you should have had faith. He didn't know, but now we know how to know when to put a little bit more effort into our trust based on this story. Fine. So that's the approach of the Ramban. But many people argue on the Ramban. Many go like the Abarbanel and say, what are you talking about? There's a famine. Of course you're supposed to leave. And what are you talking about that we all became punished and have to go down to Egypt? But you know what happens at the end of our story? Avram and Sarah are saved and they leave with great wealth. You know what happens when we left Egypt? We left free with great wealth. So ultimately, it was a good thing that came out of everything. It's like, what are you talking about, Ramban? So a lot of people argue on the Ramban. Rashi is a little bit more nuanced. Rashi says there was a big test happening here, and Avram passed the test. Because what was the test? The test was God was telling you to leave. He learns like Izzy. Rashi learns like Izzy. That there are signs. The sign is right now, God is pushing you to leave. And just like the Abarbanel, you don't rely on miracles, you got to leave. That's the approach of the Ramban. But you know what the test was? Are you going to now question God? Are you now going to be miserable and be like, God, I don't understand. You told me to come to Israel. You told me life was going to be perfect. I'm going to be blessed. And living in Israel was going to be the greatest thing in the entire world. And now the second I get here, life is really difficult. The second I get here, there's a famine. And I have to leave. Are you going to question God? Or are you going to leave and not question God? And that Rashi says that the pasuk says that he left for a short period. It says the language of Gar, which is more temporary. He left for only a temporary period, meaning Avram always wanted to come back. So if Avram always wants to come back, that means he never questioned God. He just understood this is part of the test. Not to quite, life puts you on funny curveballs, but we don't question God. We still have faith in Hashem, and therefore, according to Rashi, he passed the faith test. That cool? A little bit more nuanced than the Abarbanel. Okay, one more idea, one more fourth approach that I saw. I saw this in the Am Loez, which goes very good with somebody who asked, did the people come with him? Did the people come with him? The Am Loez writes, what was Avram's biggest purpose in life? He was the kindness guy, the chesed guy. His idea was to inspire people. But in order to inspire people, you got to find people. You got to speak to people. And if there's a famine, you know what's happening? Everybody's running away to Egypt. So if everybody's in Egypt for food, you can't open up a Chabad house in Israel if there's no food. You know, Chabad house, you got to get that cook, that chomot, that cook. You got to get the food. So he goes down to Egypt because that's where the people are, and that's where he can actually make a difference in the world as well. Cool? Questions on any of that? Comments, ideas? Is good?
I actually have a quick question.
Yeah.
Where is Abraham like geographically from originally? Before you
Originally, he's coming from the Iraq area. It's like Iraq, Iran. They're coming from the east, and they're going to travel through that area, up through Syria, and then down to Israel by the Jordan area, and eventually get down to Be'er Sheva. If you guys know Be'er Sheva, it's like what is it? Probably like an hour and a half south of Tel Aviv. And then from there, you could follow the route south. You follow the route southwest through Gaza, and eventually get to Egypt. And that's why right now, if you're reading the news about the Rafah crossing, so that's where the bottom of Israel is meeting up with the Sinai to get yourself to Egypt. So it's actually very much the area we're talking about is the hot spots right now in Israel with what's going on geographically. Okay. Other questions? I do think, though, it's a big, big topic that's for those that ever ask yourself how much faith to have, how much not faith to have, how much it's called bitachon versus hishtadlut. How much effort do I put in, and how much do I say God runs the show? These are big faith questions, and I have to say, throughout generations, we've always been split till today. You're gonna have people today. You guys want a question you're gonna hate? Who wants a question you're gonna hate? Huh? Question you're gonna hate because you guys. There you go. Thank you. It's a question you're gonna hate because you guys, and like myself, it's a question I hate also. We were raised in the West. The West is extremely rational thinking and extremely non-risk taking. Okay, unless anybody here Hasidic roots, Chabad roots, things like that. Breslov. Anybody have a parent that like Choser B'Tshuva became like a Breslover or something like that? Like no, kind of thing. Okay, fine. So nobody here has Hasidic roots. Nobody has Hasidic roots are a little bit stronger in this kind of way. But for the average rational thinker, I'm hoping that by the end of this class you're going to realize, how Western thinking you are, and maybe over the course of this year, you're going to start open your heads a little bit to some other thought processes as well. I'm not saying to discount Western thought, but I'm saying to realize that there's more views than what you've been taught growing your whole life within Judaism itself. Okay, here's the question you're not going to like. In Judaism, I think we could agree. In Judaism, we believe, what's a Jewish belief? That God ultimately decides what happens in this world, right? You might debate how much God is involved. Is it every single second like the Ramban learns? Or is it in the bigger section that God relates to us, created a system and only comes in when he has to come in, like the Rambam learns? Two approaches to how much God is involved. But in Judaism, we believe that God runs the show, that God's involved in our life. And especially in cases of life or death, ultimately, God's not going to let us die if we're not supposed to die. Is that agreed? People agree with that? Like Judaism believes that? Whether you believe that, that's not what I'm asking. But I'm asking, like, you guys have in basic Judaism, we believe that God would decide who's going to live and who's going to die. Correct? Yeah. Anybody think Judaism does not say that? You might say that God lets us do terrible things to ourselves, but that's part of the free will that God gave us. But if God wants to make it that it won't happen, he can create something to happen in the world to stop that too. But ultimately, God runs the show. Okay. If a person, God forbid, gets sick, should they go to a doctor or should they just pray to God? Huh?
A doctor?
Doctor, why? Just pray to God. God ultimately will decide if you're going to live or not live, no? Why go to a doctor? This is different than a famine. This is like a person, God forbid, gets sick. Why? Just pray to God.
It might be a quicker solution.
There might be a quicker solution. Okay. You think that medicine is faster than God?
No, it's not like that. It's like, I don't want to explain it.
But I think most of us agree you should go to a doctor. I think you should go to a doctor. I mean, why do you go to Izzy? Why do you go to a doctor?
So like if I have an infection, I can get antibiotics and not like I feel like 100 years ago when people didn't have medicine, everyone was dying a lot sooner. So I think it's a good idea to go to a doctor if you feel sick.
I hear, but I'll say something deeper. Most of these rabbis that were writing 500 years ago were doctors. Maimonides was a doctor. The Ramban was a doctor. Most of them were. That was one of the big Jewish professions, was doctors. Yeah, Ellie.
You're supposed to do both. You're supposed to do everything you can. Like, let's say it's a famine and you need to get food. You're supposed to do everything you can to get food, and then also pray to Hashem, like, help me get food.
Oh, excellent! I like it. Good. I like it. We have a concept that's known as hishtadlut. You have to put effort in. What is effort? I wasn't even going to go spiritual, but I love that you went spiritual. That's excellent. We have to do everything we possibly can do. We should pray, but God also put it into the world that we could, that the actual verse in the Torah says, Rapo Yerapeh, which the rabbis learned to mean you're supposed to go do stuff. You're supposed to take things, don't rely on miracles. And also don't just rely on our prayers, because who said our prayers are strong enough? We have to pray too. And we know God runs the show, but God also wants us to live in a world that has laws of nature, and God wants us to be able to survive and to thrive in the world that we live in. So the standard halacha is, based on the Gemara, is we go to a doctor. And we're now going back to the Gemara days. You're allowed to go to a doctor. Now, the question is, do you have to or not? That itself is an older debate. But today, it's pretty much accepted by everybody that we have to go to a doctor. Okay? We go to a doctor, you go to a doctor, you go to a doctor. Okay. But here's the question you're not going to, so that wasn't the question you're not going to like. If that made you uncomfortable, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to make you uncomfortable yet. Because I was hoping you guys would faster say we're supposed to go to a doctor. So, someone gets sick, you go to a doctor, you get your medicine. I got to put my effort in because I realize God runs the show. Here's the question. When you go to the doctor, do you have to go and find the best doctor and spend extra money and go spend everything possible to try to find that best top specialist? Or could you just go to a regular doctor and say, ultimately, God, or should you just go to a regular doctor and say, ultimately, I'm doing my effort by going to a doctor, but God's the one that ultimately decides if I'm going to live or die. That extra level expert has killed people, and that regular surgeon has saved people. Ultimately, I'm putting an effort in, but do I have to put so much effort in? Spend so much extra money on that as well? Go to crazier lengths? Or does me doing effort just mean put effort in? Go to a normal doctor that a normal person would go to and be like every other normal person out there as opposed to going crazy and trying to do much more. Yeah, Ellie.
I think it depends on like circumstance. Like if you're a very poor family that doesn't have a lot of money, you do what you can. You go to like the best doctor you can afford without like financially hurting yourself. But if you're extremely wealthy, you look for the best specialist. Like if it's not going to hurt you in such a big financial way, I think you should do whatever you can to get like the best doctor.
Everybody agree?
I agree. I think it also depends on the severity of your case. Like if you have a life-threatening condition, then I think you should try to find the best help. But if it's just like I don't know, if it's like bronchitis, I don't think you need a super talented doctor to help with that.
Now, is that coming from, is that medical advice or is that faith advice?
I guess it's kind of faith, because like, I don't know. Because I don't
It sounded to me like medical advice. Like, okay, if it's a real medicine thing, then I'm not going to rely on God. But if it's like a light medical thing, I'm going to rely on God because I don't need
think
to.
you should rely on God either way. I think you should do everything you can in any situation where, your life is at stake. You do what you can, and you put effort into it. And then whatever you can't do, that you're gonna have to hope God can do something.
Yeah. Other ideas? Who didn't like the question? But you guys liked it in the end. I hate the question. It drives me crazy. Huh? I have to say, I first heard that question. I was like 21 years old in rabbinic school. And the rabbi was an older Israeli rabbi with super faith. And he didn't pose it as a question. He looked at all of us in the room and said to us, for those of you who will only go to the best doctor in every single case, you have no faith. You only trust doctors, you don't trust God. And it was like, oh my God, we all like felt bad. Now, the truth of the matter is, that rabbi was a big rabbi. I don't disagree, but I've learned a lot since then. And I've learned there's two approaches. And in the Western world, we've grown up with the Abarbanel approach that we don't rely on miracles, do our best effort. And therefore, we're still going to do our best efforts. But I thought it was interesting because it bothered me that it got me thinking in the back of my head, where is my faith? How far does my faith go? In what areas does it not go? Fine. Okay. So that was the famine. The famine goes down. We see a massive argument amongst the early rabbis, the Rishonim, those that lived between the year 11 and 15. Major commentators of the Torah are fighting this out. Did Avram sin or did he not sin? This class, you guys seem to be very clear. I'm teaching the girls next. I'm gonna see where they hold. But you guys seem to be very much of Avram did the right thing. He's supposed to go down. And you guys are very good because you have Rashi to go with, the Radak, the Abarbanel, the Ma'am Lo'ez. You have many, 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 many rabbis that go in your direction and follow your approach, and awesome. Okay. As they're on their way down, there's Rashi comes along and Rashi says, they get to this riverbed. In the riverbed, Avraham sees his wife Sarah's reflection. And when he sees a reflection, he goes, oh my God, you're drop dead gorgeous. You are so beautiful. I'm really scared right now that they're going to kill me and take you as their wife. Someone's going to kill me and take you as your wife. Rashi says that until this point, Avram never noticed the depth of beauty for two reasons. Reason one he brings down, it's because when you're traveling, that's when people get like uglier. But he saw how beautiful she was even as they were traveling. That he said, oh my God, you really are like, okay, they're going to take you. The other thing he says is that as he's getting closer to Egypt, Egypt was known for its prostitution. We're going to see later on in the Torah, there's going to be a red light district in Egypt. It's really known for a place of znut, of sexual immorality. And the other thing and therefore, as you're getting closer to these locations, you start to think about it much more. It starts to plague you. And it's like, oh, what's going to be? I'm nervous. So he comes up with an idea. And he says, Sarah, my wife, please tell everybody you're my sister. And if you tell everybody you're my sister, that way I'll be safe and they'll give us, and they'll do good to us, meaning they'll probably give us presents because of this. Things are going to be good. The rabbis have a hard time with what Avram just said. What do you mean? First off, they're like, how could Avram lie? She's not a sister. That's his wife. Now, some want to say, yeah, it's true that it's his wife, but they are from the same tribe. It's his niece, according to Rashi. It's Haran's daughter. Yiska is really Sarah. Maybe it's his niece and their family, with the sisterhood of the Jewish community. So she's part of the sisters. So it's a white lie. I actually personally don't have a problem with the lying because he doesn't want to die. So when you don't want to die, you do what you got to do not to die. And that would be, you'd be allowed to lie not to die. But they don't like it because Avram is so holy. So how could he say sisters? They try to say, oh, maybe she's family. The part that bothers people more is, why does he say, and then they're going to give us presents because of you? Like, what's he trying to do? Trying to pimp out his wife? Like what's he doing? That line doesn't fit so well. Like, why does Avram say that? Your question? So here's the idea that I heard. Here's the idea I saw. I think it's actually very, very good. Some of the earlier commentators want to say things like Avram at this point was very poor and he owed money to people. This is the way to make money. Okay, I'm not sure where they get that stuff from exactly. They talk about the inns that he went to and that kind of thing. But then I saw a cool idea. If Avram is worried they're going to kill him and take his wife captive or take her as somebody else's wife, how do you get people to not take your wife? So here was Avram's plan, and that was a genius plan. He says, wait a second. If you tell everybody that you're my sister, so what are they going to say? This new guy, just this foreigner, came to Egypt. He came with his sister. She's an eligible bachelorette. So in those days, if you're coming there with your older brother, so who are you going to go to try to marry her? Who are you going to try to negotiate with to try to get the wife? Who do you go to? You go to the older brother. And then what do you say to the older brother? You say, oh, I would love to marry your sister, and I'm willing to offer XYZ estate for the marriage. And then the next guy's going to come and say, no, I want to marry her. I'm going to give this amount of money. And that way, what Avram's saying is, and then people are going to want to give us good stuff. What he's really saying is that then I'm going to be able to play them off each other and say, oh, I'm getting a better offer over there. I'm getting a better offer over there. And this way, no one's going to be able to marry her because he's going to be able to keep her, protected by saying, oh, I'm still in negotiations. And hopefully that'll be long enough that the famine ends. He goes back to Israel or buys whatever food that he needs and everybody stays safe. So that was, the Sefer Gan Raveh says that was what Avram's plan was to try to negotiate his way through it to save Sarah. Okay. And I think, okay, good. Fine. But that's not what happens. Why is that not what happens? Because once they get down there, Sarah was considered to be so beautiful, nobody felt they were allowed to marry her. They all felt, we got to bring her to Paro. She's so beautiful. She has to be one of the concubines of the king. And the king takes Sarah, Paro takes Sarah into the palace. Now, Paro thinks he's a great guy. Who doesn't want to be taken into the king's palace? Probably everyone does not want to be taken into the king's palace. But from his perspective, oh, look, I'm the king who wants to take this beautiful woman in. And then he tries to sleep with her. And the Torah comes along and says, and God brings a plague onto Paro and his house, which is very nice because we said, the actions of our forefathers are going to repeat themselves. Here's the first plagues that are hitting Egypt. So God plagues Paro so he can't sleep with Sarah. Paro realizes what's going on, realizes that, okay, this is funny business over here. It's because of her. She's really married to Abraham. Starts yelling at Abraham. How could you do this to me? Why? But he's so scared that he's going to about this plague. So he's like, Abraham, here, take your wife back. Take a lot of money. Makes Abraham very rich and sends Abraham away. And now Abraham is rich and he leaves Egypt. And that's how the Egypt story ends. And the famine is over now. And Abraham leaves Egypt very, very rich with money, rich with people, rich with servants, including, according to the Midrash, a couple of converts. The most famous convert, Sarah herself picked up a convert. She picked up a student. Who was Sarah's student according to the Midrash? Hagar. We're going to meet in a couple of verses this lady Hagar, that's going to be Abraham's second wife. Hagar, which is also the same letters as Hagar, the convert, is going to, according to the Midrash, was Paro's daughter. And Paro's daughter says, wow, it's better for me to follow Sarah and be her maidservant than to be the princess of Egypt. And she leaves along with Abraham and Sarah as they go back to the land of Israel. Okay. They go back to Israel. Life's a little bit better. Abraham goes back the exact same way that he traveled, paid off those inns along the way, gets back to the Negev area, to the Beersheba area, goes back to the same place where he davened and built the altar the first time. He cries out to God again and prays to Hashem and thanks Hashem for making everything so awesome. Okay. Now when they're back in Israel, they're rich. They're rich. They have a lot of money. Paro gave them a lot of money. Now, Abraham was Avram and Sarah, or Avram and Sarai at this point still. They have all of their servants, all of their followers. And then what happens? There's also his nephew Lot. Now, Lot is also very rich. Lot, we're going to see, is one of these. Let's take a vote. Okay, show of hands, guys. Show of hands. Who says Lot is righteous? Nobody. Who says Lot is evil? Who's never heard of Lot? Okay, good. Okay, Sam. Okay, Sammy thinks evil. Okay. Who says Lot is somewhere in the middle? Okay, a little more. Very good. So Lot is one of these complicated characters. He's one of these gray characters that's in the book of Bereshit. There's a couple of characters. There's people that we know are good guys. Even our good guys are very complicated. The family dynamics, we're going to see Joseph and the brothers. There's going to be a lot of problems, even amongst the family. But we have our good guys. We have our Avram and Sarah. We have our Yitzchak, our Rivka. We have our Yaakov. And we have our good guys. And we have our bad guys, even though the bad guys are also complicated. But like Esav is considered to be a pretty bad guy, especially in the Midrashim. Okay. But then we have people that are like really, really gray. They do things. They do some very good things. They do some very bad things. And then they do a lot of things that we're not sure what their intentions were. And the truth is, it's so complicated that sometimes you're going to find some commentators that are going to call them Rasha'im completely. And you find other commentators that are going to be like, well, pretty nice what they were trying to do over here. And maybe they're arguing, these commentators, maybe there's two schools of thought. Is Lot evil or is Lot good? Or maybe there's somewhere in the middle, that Lot does things that are very good, Lot does things that are very bad, and then Lot does a lot of things that can be read with two different lenses, and maybe both at the same time, because human beings are really complicated. So Lot, until this point, was kind of doing a lot of good things, because Lot was following Abraham, was trusting Abraham, and everywhere Abraham's going, he's following him. Now, it's a question if Abraham should have been taking him with him, because when God told him to leave his family behind, he said, last week's parsha, Lech Lecha, leave your family, leave Beit Avicha, leave your father's home. And some say that Lot is part of his father's home, so maybe Abraham shouldn't have taken him with him. On the other hand, it seems like what Lot did was very good, and he follows Abraham around. And some of the commentators say that Lot is doing things very right. Like when Sarah tells everybody she's Avram's sister, Lot stays quiet and goes along with it. Now, according to Rashi, Lot and Sarah are actually his brother and sister too. So he's protecting his sister as well. But Lot does a lot of good things. But now something changes. What changes? They're both very, very rich. And when you get a lot of money, what happens? When you have family business, they're a bunch of shepherds. And when you do very well in your family business and you have two very rich people, fights begin to happen. And the fights don't happen right now between Avram and Lot directly. They happen between their shepherds, between their servants, their workers, and their workers get into a major fight. What was the fight? So Rashi tells us that Lot's shepherds were busy shepherding the sheep in everybody's grassy area and letting their sheep and their cattle eat everybody else's grass. And Avram's shepherds say, you can't do that. You're stealing that person's property. You can't eat somebody else's grass. You have to have the ownerless areas. There's certain areas we're allowed to graze our sheep. You can't just go into other people's backyards and stuff. It doesn't work that way. And Lot tells Lot's servants, say, no, but God already promised the land to Avram and Avram's kids. And Avram doesn't have kids. We're the closest family. So this is our land. And God promised it to us. So we're allowed to. And Avram now gets involved and says, no, that's not true. According to halacha, we have a halachic debate. God promised my kids, not to me. And we don't own it yet. It's only going to be in the future. Therefore, this is stealing. And Lot's kind of like, no, but God promised it's not stealing. And there was this big halachic debate. Once you have a halachic debate over laws, so Avram looks at Lot and says, Lot, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. I think that you become a great guy. We're brothers. We're achim. We look the same. We act the same. You're a righteous guy. I'm a righteous guy. We're family. Let's not fight. I have a better idea. Let's just split up, and you can go be the rabbi in your area, and you can graze wherever you want. I'll be by me. Let's just split up. If you want to go left, which means north, because in Israel you always face east. So if you want to go north, if you want to go left, I'll go right. I'll go south. And if you want to go south, I'll go north. That's what he tells Lot. And Lot makes a mistake. Because what should have Lot said? No, Avram, no. You're the greater one. I still want to follow you. I still want to stay with you. But it kind of Lot was kind of saying to himself, you know what? Avram's probably right. I am a great person now too. I've learned a lot. I'm ready to go on my own right now. We're going to see. Lot's going to be complicated. He's going to learn a lot of chesed from Avraham. Not do it as right. It'll be a little bit complicated, but he's still going to be similar to Avram in many ways. So Lot says, you know what? I'm going to go somewhere else. But instead of going north and south, he looks straight ahead. He looks east towards the Dead Sea area. Although at this point it wasn't dead yet. He looks to the area next to the Dead Sea. And that area, says the Torah, was very fertile. It was great land. And it's compared to a garden, which is hinting to the Garden of Eden. Now, what do we know about the Garden of Eden? There was fruits that produced on its own. There was a river, a water source. It seems to be that originally the area next to the Dead Sea had a better water source than the rest of Israel. And it also compares it to Egypt. It says it's like a garden, i.e. like the Garden of Eden. And it's like Egypt. What did we just say about Egypt? That's where you have the Yam Suf. That's where you have yourself the Red Sea, you have the Nile, you have water source. This is a very good fertile place. But what else do we know about Egypt? A lot of evil people. What do we know about Sodom? The Torah then says openly, the people of Sodom were very evil people. According to the Midrashim, they were the anti-chesed people. They didn't believe in kindness. They were the exact opposite of Avraham. But they were rich. And Lot sees this, and he moves there. So now, you have to ask yourself a question again. Why is Lot doing this? So we see over here, here's where they start to learn Lot a little bit more negative. Because even though there was a lot of potential for money, there was also major character flaws. You just grew up with Avram, who's all about kindness. These are the anti-kindness people. It's the famous Sodom beds where they chop off people's feet and stuff. So like all these crazy stories over there. Why would you go there? Just for the money? That doesn't look good. On the other hand, we're going to learn in this current week's Parsha Vayera that Lot's going to try to save the angels that come to visit. He's going to want to keep them safe. He's going to do kindness. So even in Sodom, like maybe he wants to open up a Chabad house there and try to change the people. He's like, oh, let me take up my first project of trying to inspire people. So again, Lot's this complicated guy. But Lot leaves Avraham, moves away, and we're going to say goodbye to Lot for a couple of verses. The second Lot leaves, God reveals himself to Avraham. And God says to Avraham, he goes, Avraham, hello, great news. It's as if God was waiting for Lot to leave because Lot was holding things off. And he reveals himself to Avraham. And now he tells Avraham, you and your kids are going to inherit this land. So it's no longer just your descendants. Now it's going to be your kids as well. and you're going to have kids like the sand, like the dust of the earth. What does that mean, like the dust of the earth? So some people say that means quantity. You're going to have a lot of kids, although it doesn't say that openly. Others, by the stars, later on it's going to say that, but now it doesn't say that. It says you could be like the dust. So some learn it means you can have a lot of kids. Others say that we, the Jewish people, are going to be compared to the dust, which means it's a blessing, but it's also a difficult blessing. Because dust, dirt, people step on. People are going to step on your kids, but we're always going to last. We're always going to exist. They're going to step on us, but they're not going to be able to destroy us. And that's part of the blessing here as well, that we're going to be long lasting and fine. Then Avram moves up north a little bit, and he goes to Hebron. He moves to Hebron, sets up shop there in Hebron. Some of the commentators want to explain Avram's life basically goes back and forth from Hebron down south to the Be'er Sheva area and back up north. There are a couple of names of the places there, but it's like that's the region he's going up and down for. Now the south is more like deserty. Hebron is more mountainousy, it's more stony. There's more people up in Hebron living. So I saw some commentators want to say that Hebron is where he goes to try to inspire the people, and Be'er Sheva is where he goes where he wants to set up his own little enclave and his own school system for his family. So you have a little bit of a separation between your work and your family. I saw some people want to try to argue that. Others say that he's a shepherd, he's grazing. So you got to move your sheep back and forth places. So you go, you got to go north, go south. Although I'm not sure how clear the verses work with. The first approach, especially, I'm not so clear. But it sounds like he was inspiring people everywhere, even down south. But we do notice that he tends to go back and forth between these two cities quite a bit. And actually, the commentators are always going to wonder whenever things happen, which city was Avram in at that exact moment. Okay. Then we have a story. Then we have a world war. We spoke about this a little bit last week when we gave a little bit of a Dvar Torah. But we have now a war of the 4 kings versus the 5 kings. So what's going on? You have about 5 kings living in Israel. The most famous one is the king of Sodom that we all know about. But there's a bunch of kings. Now, kings here probably doesn't mean massive empires. It's probably more like tribal leaders, chieftains. The population of the world wasn't so large at this stage in history. But even that, a big community is probably a big family, a couple of families that marry into each other, known as a tribe. Where does the family line end? Where does the tribe start? You find in the Middle East until today, you have still very much families and tribes, even amongst the Arabs for sure, amongst the Druze and the Bedouins. You have these very much close family, tribe kind of things. So we have what's known as the 5 kings of Israel. And we know Israel's not that large, so it has to be smaller zones. Then there were 4 kings that were living over in Iraq and Iran and by Mesopotamia. They're outside areas. Now those 4 kings were very strong. And they started a little bit of imperialism. They start to conquer the land that's west of them, going from the Iraq area to Egypt. They want to conquer the whole area, including Jordan, including Israel, up until Egypt. Why do they want to conquer that area? Because that's the trade route. We're going to have ourselves the trade route from Egypt to Iraq. And it was very, very popular trade route for many, 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 many centuries. And we want to control that trade route. And we're going to make all those states that we conquer pay us taxes, and we'll be in control of the supplies. And we have this war. Now, there's two ways to look at this story. One way is that there's this big war going on, and then there's this specific story taking place. And the only reason why the Torah is telling us about that war is to get to the specific story about Avraham. That's one way that it's learned, and that's a way that the commentators, especially in the older commentaries of the last 500 years, that's how a lot of them learned it. That there's a global war that's really not so important. It's just giving us context to Lot being taken captive. But there's another approach, which is you can find sources that talk about this earlier on, but it's become a lot more popular amongst Zionist writers over the last 100 years. And I really think that after what's taking place in Israel right now, with our war, modern day commentators are relooking at the text, relooking at the Torah, not as Jews living in exile, but if you're living here in Israel, you're looking at Jews living in Israel, and how do we learn what Avram's doing? Because how do they learn the text? They learn Avram was Mr. Chesed. he was Mr. Kindness. But the second his nephew gets taken captive, he's going to go to war and he's going to fight till the end to save his nephew. Because Avram is Mr. Kindness, but Avram, when he needs to be, will be Mr. Warrior. How many of you ever thought of Avram as a warrior? Huh? You don't think that way, huh? Anybody go to synagogue this past Shabbat and the rabbi got up in shul and said, do you guys know that Avram was a warrior? Because I'm going to tell you, here in Israel, rabbi after rabbi after rabbi is writing about it, talking about it, speaking about it. Avram the warrior, because you have a clear story that goes for a whole second, as many verses that talk about the war. Meaning, for those that say the war is only there for that one verse, for the context of that one verse of Lot being taken captive, there's a lot of verses talking about the details of the war. That why are they there? Just say there was a war. But no, we're going to go into detail and more detail and more detail. So the way they learn the story is there is a real war, a real global war, and Avram the warrior is winning that war. And that's a really big message for us Jews to know when to fight. Avram's main being is kindness, but he goes to